Hi there, it's Archie and back for the ADHD Care podcast. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the podcast. Today I have a special guest. I've got Alan P. Brown, who is an award-winning ADHD coach, speaker, and creator of ADD Crusher. So ADD Crusher is basically a groundbreaking series of videos and audio tools designed to help adults with ADHD work smarter. So Alan is well known for his internationally energetic and practical approach to tackling everyday ADHD challenges like procrastination, overwhelm, low self-esteem, burnout, to name but a few. A former advertising executive who was diagnosed later in life, Alan turned his own struggles into a mission to help others find freedom through realistic, research-based strategies. He's a regular presenter at the at major ADHD conferences. I've seen him perform at the Chad ADHD conference over in the US a few times actually, and also a host of the Crusher TV and a board member of the ADHD Coaches Organisation. I'm pleased to say today Alan's joining me to discuss all things overwhelm, mental clutter and burnout. So let's bring him on.
Hey, Archie.
Pleasure to have you on our podcast, Alan. Really honoured to bring you on as a guest.
Great to be here. I'm honored to be here indeed.
Excellent. So for any of our listeners that are not familiar with yourself and who you are, do you mind just giving us a brief introduction of yourself and also about ADD Crusher?
Sure. I think the best way to introduce myself is to talk about the time when I was diagnosed, and this is back in the 90s. I was 37 almost, and was kind of floundering in my job as an ad exec. It took me 10 years to get a 4-year degree. But I finally got the diagnosis, and I'm sure we'll come back and touch on this story. But I remember being elated by the diagnosis. It explained so much, including prior drug addiction, alcohol abuse, and just my floundering at work. And I ran out and I bought a bunch of books. There were some books at that time on adult ADHD. And I got home with these 3 or 4 or 5 books. And I opened the first book and then remembered, oh, that's right, I can't really read very well.
Okay.
I'm 30% of ADDers are dyslexic, and the vast majority of the other 70% just have terrible reading comprehension like me. But so what I thought was, well, here are these books. They've got great information in them, and I researched about the difficulty of reading among ADHD adults and kids. And I thought, why hasn't someone created, something that's a little bit more interactive and fun, like videos or that kind of thing, which of course there are a gazillion now, but back then there really wasn't anything. It was only books with 382 pages and no cartoons and not even bullet points. So I decided later on that I would create something, and that became ADD Crusher, which is a video and audio and PDFs sort of program that is a virtual coach program. That's how I got here, and that ended up becoming my entering into the coaching community, and that's what I've been doing for many years now. So there's my little story.
Excellent. You've spoken a lot about overwhelm and burnout. So obviously we know with people with ADHD, that's something that they also really, really struggle with. So what does that actually mean when we say burnout or overwhelm? Do you mind just defining that for us?
Well, let's just talk about some of the common thoughts that we have in our brains all the time. I forgot this. I forgot that. Oh my, I'm late again. I never have enough time. If I just had more time, and just a general feeling of stress, anxiety. For many, it's a very high comorbidity with ADHD is anxiety. And so this lifestyle becomes what one author that I read a long time ago called the constant state of overwhelm, and that's our lifestyle, right? And but there are ways that we can sort of view it more wisely, step outside of it, look at it, and I know that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm excited about that. When you ask, what's going on underneath or beneath the surface, let's just remember we don't have the available dopamine that the neurotypical brain does. And so we don't have the get up and go. We don't have that ability to stay focused on one thing. And you can see how that inability to be able to engage in stuff, to be easily motivated, to get in on something and dog it to death, as Dr. Russell Barkley once said, to dog it to death, it just results in this overwhelm because we're not getting things done. We're late. Our time blindness has us messing up things all the time, and that all bakes a very, very gnarly cake called the constant state of overwhelm.
That's a good description there. I mean, you've said overwhelm is one of the toughest challenges that a lot of adults with ADHD face. What are the most common and obvious reasons why people feel that way?
Again, you think about our own wiring. Our neurochemistry is not what it could be or should be, or well, I don't want to use shoulds here, but it's but there are also some other factors that are involved here, and you've got things like the fact that we are overwhelmed. The fact that we are overworked, rather. Work for the 21st century human being is now collided. It's mashed up with our home life, and so we're work overload. That's definitely one. I think that especially with ADHD, we can get into a lot of perfectionism, and you don't have to be a total perfectionist to be battling perfectionism at some level. And when we're being perfectionist about things, we are not getting them done. We are taking longer to do them, et cetera. And that just piles up our to-dos, et cetera. Think about just distraction. Think about, every morning I fight the fight against distraction. And there are a million things out there that are pulling my attention away when I'm trying to actually write something, an article or a presentation. And that adds to the overwhelm. And then there's also clutter. This is something that I would say 75% of the folks that I work with, and I work mainly in group coaching, in the group coaching environment, they have clutter around. It may be some hoarding to some degree, but it just generally is just a lot of stuff around. And that clutter adds to our sense of distraction. So there are some of the underlying reasons why we are so overwhelmed in addition to our neurochemistry.
And obviously you mentioned some of the main ones there. There are some that are less obvious to the individual that can also add up to become like a big overwhelm feeling.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this because there are definitely some things that we don't think about a lot or maybe don't even know about. So one example is the fact that our brains are outgunned. This brain, fabulous as it is the same brain we've had for 200,000 to 300,000 years. And if you think about 200,000 years ago, remember back then? You think about 200,000 years ago,
yeah.
Our brains really weren't demanded to do much more than process a few hundred kilobytes worth of information, some simple decisions. And now we are increasingly asked to juggle just gads of information. Where's my phone? I love pulling up the phone and just reminding everyone that this device has more computing power than the Apollo spacecraft that went to the moon and came back. Way more computing power. And so we are bombarded with more and more information, and our brains really aren't designed to handle this much. I'm sure that over the next 100,000 years, we will evolve and become better at it through changes in our brains. But for now, we're still kind of outgunned. Another one is, I call it autopilot. And I think everyone will relate to this. You get up in the morning and maybe you grab a little coffee or tea or a little bit of breakfast, and then you go straight into your emails, or you go straight to your to-do list, or you go straight to run errands, or what. You just go straight into something without thinking about what actually should I be doing first. And throughout the day, we tend to be on autopilot. We're just doing. I'm trying to catch up. I'm doing. And we're not pausing to ask, what should I be really importantly doing now. So that's another one. And then just a kind of a kicker is rumination. All the foibles, and I am a perfect example of this. The many mistakes I've made, the difficulty I have on a daily basis, although I've gotten things pretty much crushed, but I still fight the fight every day. But negative thoughts, worry, rumination, that is adding to our overwhelm. And I'll just mention one other thing that we may get into a little bit more deeply, but it kind of deserves its own treatment. But that is just the fact that we are always trying to catch up. We're always in this sort of frame of mind that, well, I got to catch up, which there's nothing wrong with being caught up. But what happens when we're always trying to catch up on our emails, trying to scratch things off our to-do list, et cetera, is that we end up doing things for the sake of catching up rather than working on what I call our biggies. So that adds to our overwhelm, because the biggies are the really important things, and also the things that have a deadline are not getting done until the 11th hour, if at all. And that's because we're busy with these miscellaneous things. Hey, I scratched 8 things off my to-do list. Hey, I deleted 18 emails. Yay. That didn't move you forward at all. So trying to catch up is another sort of invisible reason that we are so overwhelmed.
You know, listen to you there. I'm applying a lot of things that you're saying to myself. You mentioned about when you wake up first thing, you're having your coffee. I check my emails literally as I was sitting down having my coffee. I'm not trying to prioritize, right, okay, Archie, you're just waking up, have your breakfast. There's always the time when you can start to work and focus on your breakfast rather than... I feel like I'm trying to keep on top of things. If I was to quickly check a few emails whilst I'm having my coffee, that email will then lead into something else. The next thing, here we go, I'm off to the races.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. You follow the breadcrumbs on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're like, what did I get done?
Exactly.
I certainly didn't get my most important thing done, the one thing I was supposed to do today that was a difficult thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably do this in coaching as well. Everything seems quite urgent, isn't it? When you're faced with that, and it comes down to prioritization. We're going to come down to that in a second. If I come to your own journey with, obviously, you mentioned about your own ADHD. If we focus on the overwhelm, when was it that you realized in your own personal journey that overwhelm wasn't really what you thought? I don't know what you thought about it in the first and how it applied to you. When was the realization of, gosh, I am feeling overwhelmed here?
I was the classic later in life. I was 37 or so, as I mentioned before, and I was working at an ad agency, and I was overwhelmed. I wasn't keeping up, and I began to think that I just wasn't as smart as my peers. My peers were, coming into the office at 9 and leaving at 5 and doing all this and getting promotions, and I'm slogging away. I guess this is when I was a year or two before my diagnosis, but I was really working hard, but I just wasn't catching up. I wasn't doing the things I needed to do. And I'll never forget it. Now, I worked in New York ad agencies for many years. And so this may sound a little, I can't believe that, but my boss used to call me a loser. I remember her name. I won't say it, but she used to, Al Brown, you're such a loser. That's my boss. And so I really felt that I was a loser. And I had such anxiety about work and the overwhelm that I felt that I would go to I'll never forget this. I would go to the subway platform down in the East Village of New York. I would go to the subway platform and I would not want to board the trains. And I would let 2 or 3 trains go by before I could finally muster okay, let's get on the train. Because I knew once I got to that office that I was going to just be faced with these piles of things and have my boss there going, what are you doing, loser? So that's when I really felt the overwhelm. And then, of course, I get the diagnosis. And that's why I was so celebratory when I got the diagnosis, because, oh, my God, this is why I'm not a loser. I have an explanation for so much of my life, again, including the drug addiction, alcohol abuse, because I was self-medicating. and then my inability to keep up. And an interesting thing too, is I began to notice other people whose stacks of papers meant they might be ADHD too. And that became a real interesting thing that I started to be able to talk to my fellow ADHDers once I was diagnosed. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating journey that you just outlined there. If we move on to kind of discussing about rituals, so you often talk about, using simple daily rituals to reduce overwhelm. So if someone could only start with one, which would you recommend? And what does that look like in real practice?
Yeah, so let me just preface by saying, when someone hears the word ritual, they might think, okay, I'm going to do a 45-minute thing where I got to do this and I got to do that thing and that. They're called rituals because what a ritual does is it takes us out of autopilot by just asking us to pause and think. And hopefully we have time. I'm going to share three kind of types of rituals. And these are the top rituals, and they're so much the top rituals that I call them non-negotiable rituals for beating the overwhelm. The first one is, and it comes right out of that autopilot thing, is a morning ritual, or you could call it a morning pause and plan. And all we're going to do is, instead of just diving into our emails or whatever it is we're going to dive into, that we typically just start. You had a great little illustration of your autopilot morning. If we were to just go, okay, hold on, before I start this day, let me just pause and ask basically three questions. All right, where do I need to show up today? What meetings do I have? Who do I need to pick up? Whatever. What's going on today, right? And then looking at a calendar, hopefully, and so you can see in spatial terms, okay, all right, I see where I need to be. You set alarms. I set reminders for everything every day. In my morning ritual, I set alarms for everything that's coming up, 10 or 20 minutes before each thing. And then I look at my calendar. I go, okay, great. That's what's going on today. Where's there some open space for me to do the me stuff? And by which I mean work on one or two of my biggies rather than just doing miscellaneous stuff, administrative stuff, or clicking on emails, etc. And then the third question is, all right, here's some space for me. Ideally, that space will be in your mentally strongest time, right? So mine's in the morning. So I reserve that time all the time. And then the last question is, what's one thing I can work on? What's the one thing, ideally a biggie, and ideally in my mentally strongest time, that I can work on now? That's a morning ritual. That takes 60 seconds. If you were to do this, let's just say 3 times out of 7 per week, you're going to feel less overwhelmed because you're going to be doing less of this autopilot and less of burning time in your email when you don't need to be there. And again, if you combine a biggie with your mentally strongest time, even if you only do it for 30 minutes, hopefully you can do it for an hour every day or maybe more. Your to-do list is going to start to shrink. It just can't not start to shrink.
How do you decide what is a biggie and what can wait until tomorrow or in a few hours' time? That's what a lot of ADHDers struggle with, don't they? Everything feels urgent. Everything needs to be attended to.
Yes. What is that meme of the little guy, the cartoon character, just holding up a sign that says everything is priority or something like that? And so when everything is priority, nothing is priority. So there are a lot of ways at prioritization. And what you're doing in a morning ritual is you are prioritizing, right? You're going, okay, well, not this, not that. Yes, this, yes, that. And I just really want to say 2 things. One is, stop trying to plan the perfect day. Stop trying to, okay, well, I'll do this. This is great. I got this morning ritual now, and I'm going to pause and plan my day. I'm going to put this here, and then I'm going to do that. And then stop doing that. That's magical thinking, and it's going to result in you at the end of the day going, I didn't get any of that stuff done because it was unrealistic. So just watch out for that. I call it planning light and loose. I plan light and loose. I leave lots of space in my open space in my calendar. And I really only try to work on 1, maybe 2 biggies. What's a biggie? A biggie is a thing that does not necessarily do right now. Sometimes that is the case, but it's something that's a longer term thing, like working on that special project, or it could be, the big reorganizing project. It could be dealing with your taxes, right? Which may not be due today, but you know what's going to happen in a couple of weeks or months or whatever. Those are biggies, things that really move you forward. They're the important things that need to get done. So the other thing that I want to say about prioritization is, for most of us, we are basically, with overwhelm, we are working on an urgency basis. We need to work on an urgency basis, which is we need to figure out, all right, what needs to happen today? Which sometimes can be a biggie, but sometimes it's just a miscellaneous thing. Oh my God, I got to pay my insurance. Oh my God, I forgot to pay I got to do that today. So what I invite my overwhelmed ADHD friends to do is use a filter that's called the 333 filter. And all you're doing is you're just asking yourself in your morning pause and plan or morning ritual, you just ask, all right, is there anything due in 3 hours? Okay, no, good. Nothing's due in 3 hours. Okay, good. Is there anything due in 3 days? Oh, okay, great. These two things. All right, so there's a good place to start, right? And then if there's nothing due in 3 days, what's due in 3 weeks? Now, you could do a 1-1-1, 1 hour, 1 day. You know, you could do a 2-2-2. You could do a pi squared, pi squared, pi squared. Doesn't matter. As long as you're able to have this little filter that helps you decide, okay, this has got to get done now. And if you operate on that basis and take care of your urgent things so you're not doing them at the last second or going, oh my God, that's right, I forgot, you're going to feel less overwhelmed. So there's my little mini treatise on prioritization, a big topic all its own, but I'm glad you asked about it.
You also speak about recovery rituals. Can you tell the difference between genuine rest and the kind of downtime that still drains your energy?
Well, the best way to do this is to first just talk about one of the other ritual, which is what I call a work session ritual, because that leads us into a recovery thing, right? So bear with me, but so you've done your morning ritual and you've decided on the one thing that needs to get done, whether that's because it's urgent or because, you know what, this is a biggie. It's not due for a while, but I really need to move this forward. What you want to do with our ADHD brains is we really want to make a big deal of the work session that we're going to devote to this thing. What do I mean? So here's what I do every time I sit down for a work session. I identify the one thing I'm going to work on, one thing. And then I make a big deal of it. I will go and rehydrate. I'll guzzle what's left of this and refill it. Hydration helps your brain. I will top off I'm a decaf guy. I'm going to top off my decaf over here. I'll make sure I got my meds ready. I will put 20 grams of protein, if possible, in my tummy. And I will sit down on a clear surface. If you can do that, great. If you can't, do your best. And then I'll set a timer for 1 hour. That's a work session ritual. Just think about what this has done. This has elevated. All right, well, let me just get in. I got to get busy on this thing. From that to, all right, I am now prepared to sit for an hour potentially and work on this one thing. You have sort of built a little force field around that. So that's the non-negotiable ritual number 2. So that leads us into the recovery rituals, because at some point, even if you've set yourself up well with the hydration and the protein and everything, there's going to be a point where you hit a little bit of a wall, right? And your brain starts to go over here, over there, or you just go, I'm tired of doing this, whatever. What we will tend to do is we'll go here, right? We will seek some relief or some rest in this thing, or going and checking our emails, or looking back at our to-do list to some miscellaneous crap or whatever. But the biggest culprit is this thing. And the problem with this thing is that these things, whether it's your email or social media or the news headlines or whatever, or a game, they're not restful. They are taking more energy. So if you want to go back to that work session, you don't want to be burning energy. You want to be restoring energy. So this is what a recovery ritual does. It is restorative. A few quick examples. Go get more protein. Go top off a little bit of protein. Go walk around the block. Walk around the block. I won't bother you with the research. Just trust me and go walk around the block. Get up and stretch. Get up and just walk around the room. Lie down. Without this thing in your hand, lie down for 10 minutes. Set a timer for 10 minutes and lie down. Put a pillow over your face. Just lie down. You don't go to sleep. You don't have to go to sleep. But what you're doing is you're resting your mind. Now, The difference between going here and coming back, frustrated or exhausted, but you will definitely have less brain glucose available to you by going here versus having just laid down for 10 minutes or getting up and walking around the block. There will be more oxygen restored to your brain. Your cortisol will be under control. And now you're in a better position to go back and sit down and continue that work session. So think about how many work sessions we begin and then we don't finish. Let's just say that you started to finish 4 to 5 work sessions by not necessarily completing the task, but by working for a solid hour or 2 hours on something, and you did that 4 to 5 times a week. You're going to have your to-do list start to shrink and you're going to feel less overwhelmed. So those are my 3 non-negotiable power rituals for beating the overwhelm.
In case anyone was listening and can't watch the video, when you said this thing, you're referring to your phone.
The phone. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. It's the phone, man. It's the phone. Most people probably went, I know what he's talking about when he said this, but yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, for anyone supporting individuals that have ADHD, it could be family, it could be your partner, it could be your manager at work. How can they encourage some of these rituals without kind of putting pressure on the individual?
I think that this is a great question. I think the thing we need to do is we need to let the people around us know that this is something I need in order to be productive. And I know our managers will appreciate that. I know our partners will appreciate that, our colleagues. But, for instance, when I worked in the corporate world, I began a habit of putting a sticky on my door. This is when I was more senior. I put a sticky on my door that just said, come back after 2 p.m. or whatever. I was just letting people know that I am in a focused work session. So just that little bit of communication would have people not knocking on my door. And then at 2 o'clock, they become showing up at my door, which was fine. Letting my wife know that, hey, I'm going up to the attic. That's where I do a lot of my focused work. I'm going up to the attic to work on so-and-so, and she will then know not to text me or to so-and-so. So people can support us by first knowing what it is we're up to, right? And whether that is doing a recovery ritual or being in a work session or just sitting down in the morning over breakfast to do our pause and plan, letting people know this is what I'm doing and these are things that help me do it.
We talked about strategy 1, if you want to call it, rituals. I want to talk about the second strategy, which is mindset. Again, you talk a lot about this. So which mindset shifts tend to make the bigger difference for people struggling with overwhelm?
The first one is, I call it getting in the now. And some of you have heard of Eckhart Tolle, his book, The Power of Now. But it may sound a little bit Buddhist, but hear me out. So when we begin our day, let's say we're beginning our morning ritual, our pause and plan, and we look at our long to-do list. And that long to-do list can generate cortisol. Just looking at the many undone things. Oh my God, there's this. And oh, geez, there's that too. Just looking at our email inbox first thing in the morning, which is one of the reasons why we really shouldn't be looking at our email inbox in the morning. We may have time to talk about that later, but just it causes stress when we look at all the undone to-dos. And what I invite folks to do is just pause and feel that feeling and then remind yourself, okay, there are all these to-dos. Are any of these a problem right now? Absolutely right now. Because if one of these is a problem that needs to be handled right now, great. Let's do that. Let's do that maybe we do that before breakfast. But 99% of the time, these to-dos just feel like they're attacking us. They just feel like they're on our shoulder or on our back, scratching and screaming. And that's not the reality for most of our things. And so what we can do to benefit ourselves, mindset-wise, is just remind ourselves, you know what? Everything's cool. Everything's cool. If I did nothing for the next 5 minutes, in fact, if I did nothing for the next 5 hours, everything would probably still be cool. I'm just speaking figuratively. I'm not telling anybody to not do anything for 5. But if we just have the thought, everything's cool. I can get to all this. if I can get to what needs to get done today, I'm just going to pause and plan first, right? That is a more powerful way from which to pause and plan than, oh my God, oh geez, there's these, oh my God, I forgot about these, which is a natural reaction. But if we can catch ourselves in that, that's called being in the now. And your cortisol will go down, more oxygen to your brain. And then what? You're able to make better prioritization decisions, right? The next one is also a little Buddhisty, if you will, and I just call it nothingness. And this is a real tough one for our ADHD peeps. You know, I keep lifting my phone, and I'm lifting it again now. You know, when we've got a little break, when we've got, you know, particularly, you know, when we need a break from work, we will grab this thing, as I mentioned before. But also when we're like waiting in line, I used to do this when I worked at an office nearby before I retired from advertising. There was a Starbucks there in the ground floor of the office. And I would walk in, and of course there would be a line in the morning. And while I was online, I would reach into my jacket pocket. I always wore a suit, in jacket pocket, pull this out, and then just start busying my mind with something, whether that was the news headlines or checking my emails again, even though I just checked them 15 minutes ago, et cetera, et cetera. And so my mind was kept busy with something all the time. But I read something about the power of letting your mind just do nothing, in the context of what you may have, some of your or listeners may have heard of, which is the default mode network. When we stop keeping our mind busy with things and just do a little bit of nothing, yes, we're still going to have thoughts, but eventually those thoughts start to recede a little bit, and we enter into what's known as the default mode network. And when that happens, our synapses start to crosstalk a little bit, and we start to get ideas. But just as important, we are not fueling our cortisol engine by reading headlines or stressing about emails, et cetera. So what I started to do is I put my phone back in my pocket, and I just look out the window. Just look out the window. Here in San Diego, you got palm trees to look at, which is kind of nice. I just look at some palm trees. And then I get my order, and then I go to the office, and I would feel less stressed because I wasn't keeping my brain running and doing this and thinking about that, et cetera. So there's another one. The only other mindset I'm going to touch on, and I'm going to do it very briefly because I know we're covering a lot here, and I want to respect everyone's time, but it's just the watch out for the catching up. That's a mindset thing. If I'm in a mindset of I got to catch up, that will lead me to do more miscellaneous, not really important, dare I say, pseudo-productive things that feel like productivity really aren't. So just watch out when you're saying to yourself, I need to catch up. And there's nothing wrong with catching up, but you want to make sure that you're catching up on the right things, like your biggies. So there are some mindset things to consider.
I like what you said about the distraction of the phone, and I think we're all guilty of doing that. I've been guilty of that. Particularly when you're out and about, I see it when you go on the bus, when you go on the train. People are literally on their phones all the time, and I did that exactly what you did the other time when I was on the train, and I was like, okay, Archie, just put your phone away and just look around you, and literally like the whole carriage was on the phone pretty much. And people are missing things going on around them. And I'm like, it's a beautiful day. Can you just look outside or just let your mind be free? Because essentially you're going to get to where you're going. Most of the time you're going to work and you're going to be looking on a screen. And you're not going to have that time to just, as you say, like absorb whatever's going on around you and just let your mind not be focused on something. And this sense of like, oh, I have to be looking at this. And I mean, it's a challenge. I think some of it's a societal thing, isn't it, that we all do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, Archie, that for those listeners who want a recap of this, just rewind to where he started. Don't go back to what I said, because he just stated what I was trying to state. He did it more eloquently and using a great example that we can all really, you just nailed the heck out. I just got back from Japan for a couple of weeks, and it's my first time there. And, you know, this is a very technologically driven society, of course. And I thought that here in the States and in the UK that I visited many, many times, that, you know, our device usage, wow. Literally everyone on the train is on their device and face right in it for many of them. So it's definitely an issue. And I just like the way you put that. Hey, look out the window once in a while. It's a beautiful day, and give my mind a rest for when I arrive where I'm going, when I do need to then turn my brain on. And by the way, this is a great recovery ritual too, isn't it? By just putting your phone down. All right.
Absolutely. I mean, many of us, we carry this sort of self-criticism and guilt and not doing enough. I mean, are there simple kind of exercises or kind of writing prompts that can help change that inner dialogue that we usually have?
This is a perfect time to bring this up, because we were talking about the catching up syndrome, or the fallacy of catching up, and we all, as ADDers, we're all behind on something. We're all overwhelmed. We're all, if I just wish I had more time. And so we get this feeling that we can't accomplish anything, that we never finish anything, and that we'll never get caught up, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and you actually mentioned like a writing prompt, I think you said, that's really where the one of the solutions is. It's a great thing, and it's really supported in the research, to just, at the end of the day, what if you were to have a little sticky pad on your bedside table, and before you shut the light out, and hopefully you will have turned off your device long before you get into bed, but that's another topic. But if you were just to write down 3 things that went well today, the 3 things that you finished, or just any 3 things, maybe 3 gratitudes, or 1 gratitude and 2 things you did. That is a powerful way to start changing the narrative in your brain from I sucked again, I blew it again, I'll never be able to blah, 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 and not recognizing the things that you actually did do. So that's my answer to that one.
I mean, when a day starts to spiral, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, where you wake up with an idea that I want my day to go this way, but from an early stage, you start to notice it's just spiraling out of control. What's your goal to kind of trying to reset your mental kind of state of mind in that situation?
This is a great question. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before. Maybe you have, but another sort of mindset shift is to go from, this day is shot, I blew it, this day is totally off the rails, to, you know what? I can start or restart my day anytime I want. We've all had the morning that just wherever, the baby threw up all over everything, or the boss called this meeting and that completely torpedoed all my work sessions in the morning, or whatever, or just the car broke down, whatever. And we go, oh my God, this day is shot. It's shot. So you know what? I'm just going to practice my Sudokus and finish watching that TV series or whatever. I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but I found a long time ago that that's a horrible waste of a half a day. And I began to, this doesn't happen often to me. I have a pretty controlled world. I don't have an infant in the home. I've got, I work from home. I don't work for a boss, et cetera. So I don't have many days. But on those days where, let's just say I wake up not feeling well, or something did go wrong, something happened in the house where something broke down or whatever, and it just stole and then now it's 2 p.m. and oh my God, everything is ruined. I can start my day right now. It's 2 p.m. Great. Let's do our morning ritual. Let's do our pause and plan. All right. Got a few hours left in this day. What's one thing I can do today? One thing I can start on. I hope everybody absorbs that, because we often get into that, oh my God, this day is shot. I screwed it all up. It's a mess. I didn't do this thing, whatever. And just go, you know what? I can restart my day right now, anytime. Yeah.
I think it's about giving yourself grace, isn't it? Not beating yourself too much.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what that little journaling thing is about also, is giving yourself grace and saying, hey, I'm trying. I actually had a couple little successes today. They may be little, but hey, let's celebrate what we can celebrate.
So we've covered sort of two main kind of strategies of coping with overwhelm. Just to recap, we did rituals, we did mindset, and obviously this is kind of like a whistle-stop tour on these strategies. And I know you got your masterclass where, I mean, we can give people details of it towards the end as well, where you go into detail and spend more time discussing these strategies. Let's move on to talk about the environment and the workspace as a third strategy.
Yeah, this is absolutely critical. And I mentioned early on that one of the sort of obvious or maybe not so obvious causes of overwhelm is clutter, just having all kinds of crap around us. And I don't mean crap because it can be, valuable stuff, et cetera, but you know what I mean. It's stuff that's in our way. It's stuff that's in our line of sight. And by the way, a cluttered line of sight steals attention, focus, and energy from us. That's from the research. And I won't go any deeper into that, but just know that if you've got a very busy, whether it's stacks of stuff or a lot of too many pictures or a lot of sticky notes or whatever, that is pulling energy away from you when you're trying to focus on one thing. So I just have really just two things I'm going to share about workspace. One is always try to work from a clear surface. And if you can clear the visual clutter in front of you, that's absolutely helpful. For a lot of us, that's just not possible, but maybe some of us need to get up and work in a different space on occasionally. If our workspace is just, horrendously cluttered, maybe we need to go to a coffee shop once in a while. Maybe we need to get up and go to another room or go sit outside if we can. That's powerful. But I keep a very clean workspace so that when I sit down, it's my laptop, it's my planner, my phone, my water, coffee. And that's really kind of it because I don't want any visual or physical noise around me. So keep your workspace clear. And the second thing I want to share is what I just call a workspace reset. And it's the simple little exercise that I think everyone could do, like right after listening to this episode, is just look at your desk, the place where you work the most, and just take everything off the surface of your desk. Just going to set it aside for a second or a couple of minutes. Maybe you leave the computer or whatever. And then what you're going to do is set a timer for a couple of minutes, 2 minutes. And then you're going to just put back the things that you use every time you sit at the desk, depending on what your job is. It might be a stapler. It might be your can of pens. It might be whatever. It might be a cute little tchotchke or something like that is really important to you, or a photograph that's really important to you. Great. But just try to put back only those things that are purposeful for every time you sit down. And knowing that a lot of us don't have a lot of spare space or that we've already got piles of crap under our desks, no problem. But see if you can take the other stuff and put it nearby out of your line of sight, whether that's in a drawer or even just in a pile under your desk, for those things that don't require use every single time you sit down. And when that buzzer goes off, stop and stop putting things on your desk and just get busy hiding the other stuff within arm's reach. That's a real powerful thing to do. And what I do at the end of every day is I make sure, and I work at really 3 different desks on any given day, because I do a thing that I call venue change, which is when I get sort of a little bit burned out, it's too strong a term here, of working in one spot, I'll go switch to another spot. I've got a desk out in the studio in my backyard. I've got a desk up in the attic, or really a chair and a workspace up there. But I always, when I'm done working, I always clear that space, put everything back where it belongs, so that when I arrive at that space the next day, I go, look at this nice, organized, non-ADHD workspace I've got here. And it sort of inspires me to get to work.
Shall we talk about sort of real life scenarios here? I've got a few. I don't know how many we can squeeze in the time that we have. So,
sure.
So let's say someone's facing overflowing inbox. We talked about emails quite a lot today, competing deadlines or family demands. How would you suggest that they approach that?
Well, I would, the way you put that, wow, an overflowing inbox, competing deadlines, family demands, on all this stuff coming at us. It sounds like a typical morning for many of us and most of us. I just want to say, think about when you're starting to feel that overwhelm. I'm going to share 2 things here. When you start to feel that overwhelm, See if you can remind yourself to get in the now, to just go, all right, okay, there's some crazy stuff around me. There's a lot of things to do. I've got a bunch of unread emails, etc. But right here, right in the now, everything's cool. Everything's cool. And let me just pause and think about what's the first thing that needs to get done. And remember that 3-3-3 rule. Okay, so any of this stuff due in 3 hours, etc. The other thing I want to share here is the latest research on anxiety. And I'm an anxiety sufferer, like so many of my ADHD friends. But Judson Brewer at Brown University, their mindfulness lab, I think it's called, he did a lot of research, and there was other research done too, about the phenomenon of when we are anxious about something, it will usually show up in our body somewhere. So when I feel anxious or stressed, I typically feel it in my shoulders and my neck. Some people feel things in their solar plexus, but wherever it is for you, that's a great hint that something is going on up in your brain that is anxiety driven. So for instance, if I've got that overflowing inbox, competing deadlines, family demands, all this stuff coming at me, I might start to feel something in my shoulders and neck that will allow me to go, hey, let me go check upstairs and see what's going on up here, right? And the moment that you go up there into your brain and you observe, oh yes, I'm freaking out about the emails and the deadlines and the family stuff going on, and the fact that there are actually some workers right now, and I'm not joking, tearing down a fence and putting in a new one. They just started right now. Okay, that's good. Now I'm also waiting in the next hour for a guy to come and fix the heating and air conditioning unit in the attic. So anyway, just a little bit of real life. You wanted real life, Archie. So Anyway, the really cool thing is the moment that you recognize something in your body, that gives you the opportunity, oh, let me go check upstairs. And when you check upstairs, the moment you observe what's going on there, the thing you're worried about, that anxiety starts to recede and your cortisol recedes. What a revolutionary finding this is. Listen to your body when you're stressed. Use that as your prompt to go, oh, let me check upstairs. What am I thinking about? Oh, I'm thinking about this thing. Boom. That loop, as Judson Brewer calls it, that's a loop. And the moment you observe, oh, I'm in this loop about worrying about the da-da-da, you start to dissolve, you're out of the loop and you start to dissolve the anxiety. So that's my answer to that one.
I'll throw another one at you. Okay, so I'm a clinician, so I'll be included in this one. So for clinicians or coaches that are listening to this, what one change could make their support plans more sustainable for clients managing overwhelm?
That's a great question. That's a big question, Archie. That's a big question, Archie. I think the most important thing, and it's really kind of where you started us in the conversation, and I think it's just acknowledging the existence of the overwhelm, the fact that it really does feel like a constant state of overwhelm, and then I think it's really important to know the reasons why. The fact that we are, our brain is kind of outgunned. The fact that we do have these habits that sustain overwhelm, like autopilot, and trying to catch up, always trying to catch up. I just think that the more aware we are of the reasons why we're suffering certain things, that's the most helpful thing we can do as a starting place. So that's where I take that.
A lot of us, we have this idea of, okay, Sunday scaries, if you want to call them, where you start to look at the week ahead, you got so much going on, so much coming along, and you don't know where to start. And there's a lot of clutter that you probably might need to go through. How would you clear your head and clear your mindset, clear your workspace, everything that we've been talking about, just bringing it all together, the rituals, the mindset shift, the environment, the workspace, to go into the new week feeling less overwhelmed?
It's I've heard the term Sunday scaries before, but I don't experience Sunday scaries, but I know plenty of folks who do, and I encourage anyone to try to have, if they can, a Sunday planning session. And planning's really too big a word. I feel like planning should be done on a daily basis, but there's nothing wrong with looking forward to your week. It's, oh, that's right, on Friday I got this so-and-so. That's a wise thing to do. But I like the idea of to clear the decks before even doing any planning. It's just do a brain dump. Just do a Sunday brain dump. Just put all the things you're thinking about, all the things you're anxious about, just dump them out of your brain. Put them in writing, by the way, and it's best to write them down by hand, and I won't bother you with the research on that. But it's a great way. There's an old saying that when you take worries out of your brain by writing them down, they don't anymore occupy as much space in your brain. And I think there's truth to that, and I do believe that there's some research to support that. So a brain dump is just putting all the stuff that's bopping around in your popcorn popper of a brain and putting it down on paper, and then sitting back and looking at it a little bit. That's a better place to start your week from than continuing to juggle all of it in your brain, which is difficult for us to do. We can make more sense of the week to come by having this stuff out in writing in front of us. And what will it take? Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just brain dump, your top 5 or 10 worries or things that need to happen this week or whatever. That's where I would go with that.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking about a few things that, again, a lot of people that have ADHD struggle with. I think generally, even the neurotypicals, not being able to say no, taking on more than that they can handle or cope with. What will be your advice for anyone listening who struggles to just say no, who just keeps taking, and to feel overwhelmed as a result of that?
This is a wonderful question. All of us, we are all yes machines. I was a yesing machine, man. And in a way, it was one of the ways that before my diagnosis, when I couldn't really do the tricky, difficult work, I sort of maintained what reputation I had by saying yes to everything. And I was known as super helpful and a good guy and all that, which was great. But especially once I became an entrepreneur, that becomes a real problem. And also, as I became a manager, I had to say no and I had to delegate more, but that's another story. So I think the first thing we want to recognize, and I've developed a presentation that I plan to present at next year's International Conference on ADHD about ADHD and our low self-esteem. And the yesing comes in part from us not feeling valid, not feeling enough. And so we people please, insecurity, people please. And there are a lot of ways and so it's difficult for us to say no. But I think, and this deserves its own treatment, which we can't get into, but I just invite folks to think about, first of all, how much we're saying yes. What are our yes triggers? What are the things that tend to, so it might be the colleague trigger. It could be a friend trigger. Well, my friend, it could be the I owe you one trigger. Oh, they did me a favor or whatever. Just examine your triggers, the things or the situations where you tend to say yes. And then consider, and there are a whole lot of different ways to say no without saying no. I call them no's, which I won't get into, but just start to consider with each of those triggers ways you might say, hey, you know what, I can't do that right now, or I would love to, but, etc. That's a great place to start on that one.
How about delegation?
Delegation. I was in corporate, as you know, for 20 some years, and the first, 10 years, no, really the first 6 years, I wasn't getting promoted as often as I think I only got promoted twice. I only got promoted twice in my first 6 years. My goodness. But one of the reasons that I didn't even after I got promoted to a slightly more senior level, and this is after I was diagnosed and treated for ADHD, I still wasn't getting, I was getting good reviews, but I wasn't getting the promotion to have more people under me because my bosses would say, Alan, you're doing great, but we can't promote you because the people under you don't have anything to do. And that's because I was doing it all. I didn't know how to delegate. And when I did try to delegate, it resulted in bad instructions and frustration for both parties, et cetera. So what I learned was that delegation is one of those things that ADHD brains can't do well generally because it requires, what's the word? Linear thinking. It requires sequential thinking. We need to be able, well, this needs to happen, then that, then that, then that. We're terrible at that. We're synaptic thinkers. We're like, over here, over there, over there, over there. So what I came to practice was giving myself plenty of time to etch out the instructions so that it would be just so Dr. Seuss simple, that, 5-year-old simple, that when I showed them then to the person to whom I was delegating, I could say, okay, this is how I've done it. You let me know how you might do it better, et cetera, but do you understand these, right? And it's nice that you asked about delegation right after you asked about saying yes too much, because the other part of delegation is being willing to ask the favor. A part of the reason I didn't delegate is because I didn't want to bother anybody, even people who worked for me.
Yeah.
So take the time to create those instructions, go over them with the person to whom you're delegating. And by the way, when you start to delegate, that's a big overwhelm beater right there, not to mention a promotion getter.
There you go. Anyone listening who might be feeling completely stuck, what's one thing you would recommend or advise or say to them?
If you're feeling completely stuck, know that, first of all, there are a bunch, probably in the millions, of people that are stuck just like you, and you're not alone. So make sure you get some community. There are support groups across a lot of organizations. This ADHD Care that Archie has put together is an amazing entity itself. Find connection there. Keep listening to content like this that reminds you that, hey, man, there's a bunch of people out there battling the same thing about overwhelm. Oh, my God, he just did the autopilot thing. Oh, my God, that's so me. That, to me, is the first thing we need, is just to know we are in a club, a special, kooky, lovable club, and that you can get unstuck. And then the last thing I would say on that is just try to work one thing that you think might help you. Just try to work one thing. How many tips and strategies have we talked about here in this hour? My goodness, it's a lot of good stuff. Yeah. But I really invite you, everyone, to forget all of it except for one or two things. The one or two things that really resonated with you. Maybe it was the doing a recovery ritual instead of jumping on my phone. Maybe it was just trying to have that morning pause and plan. Whatever it was that really resonated, write that in big letters on a sticky and put that right on your forehead, or maybe somewhere where you can see it. And just start working that one thing. Because once you start to get progress on one little thing, you're going to start to realize how you can unstick yourself and get unstuck.
Any practical tools or apps that you can recommend for people to try and use personally, that you've used yourself or you recommend to your clients?
I'll share two really silly ones. They're not silly, but and then I'll share one that's really kind of cool. So first of all, is a planner. I know for so many of us, it's like, I tried planners, but when you can begin to use a planner that works for you, something that works for you, and I use the Mona Planner. You can learn more about it at monaplanner.com. Mona is the gal who created it. I'm not an affiliate. I don't get any commissions or anything. I'm just a big fan. I've been using it for 10 plus years after trying many planners. Tell Mona I sent you, monaplanner.com. But I found a planner that is simple enough for me. It's very ADHD friendly. And then what I did is I just tried to be consistent with it. I kept it with me all the time. I dropped it. I put it on the floor next to my bed when I went to bed so that when I got up in the morning, I would have to pick it up. Little stuff like that. Because once you start to use a planner enough and you keep your notes in there and don't create free notebooks, don't do that, you start to realize that you can't not have this with you. And then you start to really use it. And then you'll start to feel more organized and you'll be able to do a more powerful pause and plan every morning and a whole bunch of other benefits. The other app that I use is timers and alarms. I set a timer every time I sit down to do a work session. That helps me because my brain wants to try to make it until the bell rings. And then I set alarms for everything. I'm never late for anything because I just know to use my alarms all the time. And I also don't ignore my alarms. You got to watch for that one. But I'm going to just share one more really kooky app that I'm not an app guy, but this app has really given me tremendous benefit, and that is something called Text Expander, all one word, Text Expander. And what it does is you plug in a phrase or a paragraph or, for that matter, a password that you use often, and you give it a code in this app, and then all you need to do is type the code, and it'll populate that thing. So I use it for emails that we send to customers and clients. I use it for passwords. I just go, for instance, if I wanted to get my PayPal password, I type semicolon PPPW, which stands for PayPal password, and boop, it auto populates. And now I don't need to go look up and I don't lose my password. So Text Expander, there you go.
I mean, we mentioned it briefly about your masterclass. Do you want to tell our listeners exactly what they are and what to expect and when the next one is going to be run?
Yes, thank you for that. And I'll actually be doing the masterclass on Overwhelm probably in December, but here's what I invite everyone to do. Go to addcrusher.com. Don't write this down. Just go there right now so you don't forget. And download either the 5 things you're doing every day that make our ADHD worse, which we're all doing, or one of the other things. There's a quiz in there. There's one of my favorites is Alan's Formula for Focus, which is just 5 things I do every day that help me stay focused with or without meds. And that'll put you on my list, and you will see emails about the upcoming masterclasses, which we do every couple of months. But there are also other great things that we do that will help you in your battle to get unstuck and stay unstuck. ADHDcrusher.com.
ADHDcrusher.com, and I'll put that the details in the podcast description as well. Just before we finish, just to quickly round and summarize everything we've covered today, particularly the 3 strategies, do you mind just quickly recapping in literally like 1 minute everything that we covered, just for our listeners, as a kind of final summary?
You bet. Thanks for that opportunity. Look, overwhelm is caused by a lot of things, some sort of obvious, some not so obvious. We ADDers suffer from it more than others. We are living so too often in a state of constant overwhelm. There are 3 areas where there are great opportunities to beat back the overwhelm. One is with rituals, a morning ritual. Just start your day by pausing and asking, what's going on today? And what's one thing I can do? A work session ritual. Make a big deal. When you're going to sit down and work on something, make a big deal of it. Get some protein in your tummy, some hydration, etc. And then recovery rituals. When you hit a bump, a speed bump, or you're flagging, don't go to your phone. Get up and walk around. Push some blood up to your brain. Then there are mindsets. We talked about getting in the now. We also talked about not worrying about catching up so much and just really be focused on how we can bang out our biggies, et cetera. We talked about a clear workspace and resetting your workspace. I think the other thing that I would just reiterate is for those who are stuck or feeling stuck or partially stuck, just, go back to, first of all, realize, acknowledge that you are in good company here, and go find the resources. As the folks in the UK might not have heard of Mr. Rogers, but he had a children's show for many years. He was just this wonderful former minister who was this gentle, kind man. And there was some tragedy that happened back in the 70s in America. Oh, it was probably a horrible shooting or something like that, which we like to do a lot. And he just said on the TV, he said to the kids, he says, always look for the helpers. When something terrible has happened, always look for the helpers. And you've got folks like Archie in your life and folks like me. We are helpers. And then there are a whole bunch of other helpers. Just keep looking for the helpers and don't try to take on more than your brain can. Just try to focus on working on one little tip or strategy at a time.
Sound advice there. And yeah, I think you've just summed it up nicely. We mentioned about the International Conference on ADHD, which is obviously an annual event, and that's another place where people can go and get together if they're lucky enough to be able to travel, if you're outside of the US. And I mean, even if you're from the US, you can also travel to that. It's done annually. The next one, which is in the next coming month, is going to be in Kansas City, and that's what I found from it. I think it brings a lot of not just professionals. You have people with ADHD themselves going there. It's like a whole community coming together, learning, sharing ideas, experiences, and where people don't have to mask, they just feel themselves. That's how I got to actually. Well, I knew about your work, but I think we sort of met there over the last sort of few years, and I'm looking forward to coming this year and connecting with you and a whole host of other people as well. So that's another platform where people can reach out to and seek some support. If they can't make it, you can also get some information from the CHAD website and ADA and all these other organizations.
Let me say two quick things here, Archie. First of all, I really look forward to seeing you. And it's just a month from now. But one, the ADHD, the International Conference, is the best thing an ADHD person can do. I always say that even if they didn't have all the breakout sessions and the keynote speeches and all the learning that's available there, you would still have an amazing conference if you just had the people show up and be in the same space. To be in the space, physical space with all your peeps, it's an amazing, amazing thing. And everybody leaves there just floating on a cloud. The other thing that I'll say is there is also a virtual summit coming up in February. So watch for that. If they do an in-person one in Kansas City this year, next year I think it's Baltimore, and then they do a virtual one early the following year. So watch for that.
And anyone, again, you give us our website. Are you on social media? If people want to follow you on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook?
Sure. I think the best is on Facebook. We've got about 30,000 followers there. It's facebook.com/ADD Crusher. There's always something of value putting there. We don't bombard it with a lot of stuff, but it's always something of value that'll help you with your day.
Are you able to give us a teaser of what your presentation is all about this year at the conference? Or is that a best kept secret?
No, it's something. Hey, you want to hear a quick ADHD story? So last year, this was going to be my presentation last year, but I never hit the submit button on the proposal. I finished the proposal, all written up, and then I didn't hit the button. I literally didn't hit the button to submit. And when all of my colleagues started to get their notices as to whether they got accepted or not, I reached out to the head of CHAD and I said, hey, what happened? Didn't you get? And they said, Alan, you never submitted anything. So anyway, that was my ADHD moment for last year. Luckily, I did get to present. I was part of an influencer panel. I'll be on an influencer panel this year too. But anyway, so this year's presentation is what last year's was supposed to be. And it's called 10 Mindset Shifts for More Doing and Less Stressing. You can tell I'm big on mindset shifts. Well, I get really into a lot of little mindset shifts in this presentation.
And also not forgetting you're an author as well. You've got a few things you've published out there.
Yeah, I've got a best-selling book called Zen and the Art of Productivity. This is a paperback. You can just find it on Amazon. And if you read it and you like it, please leave a review or just send me an email and say, Alan, your book is terrible. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And that'd be cool too.
Absolute pleasure having you, Alan. Is there anything else you want to mention before I let you go?
No, I just want to thank you, Archie, for doing what you're doing. And I can't wait to see you in a few weeks.
Take care,
Nice
Alan.
job.
See you then. Cheers, then. Bye.